All right. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I am excited, and I have a certain sense or level of, I guess you could say, heaviness for this subject. And I want to start and say that because what we're talking about is we used to call it domestic violence, and they have changed the term to not terminology to intimate partner violence, and that really in part and probably largely is in order to engulf anything and everything, right? So dating, homosexual, gay, lesbian, GLBT community, all those things is now all included in this domestic violence term. Now, intimate partner violence, and they do use IPV throughout, and so I went ahead and started using it as well. Um, So I just want to say that this is before I don't want you to be distracted. I want you to stay with me for a second. Um, if you have experienced this, you are in for a ride potentially. I'm not trying to be funny or cute. I'm telling you, this has the potential to stir things up in you. That is normal. That is okay. If you need to talk to me, please call me. I will help, do what I can and talk with you and listen to you. So just tuck that away. I'm not going to, when I do things like this, I'm not going to say, oh, well, this might be tough, so I'm not going to really cover it or not really, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, yeah, no, we're going to talk about it. We're just going to lay it out there. And as people who minister to people, pastors and counselors, you're going to be hit smack dab in the face with this stuff. So you have to get ready for it. And if you need to go to counseling yourself, if you need to go through some kind of healing process yourself, then I would encourage you to do that. Freedom Ministries at the church, if you're around, and Kairos 1 and Kairos 2, which is part of Freedom Ministries, is our options as well. Very powerful and very healing. I just went through Kairos 1 last weekend. It was amazing. Thursday and Friday. It was amazing. All right, let's open in prayer and we'll start. Father, we praise your name. We thank you for your love and your grace and your mercy. I pray as we broach this difficult subject, these difficult topics, that you would give us all wisdom and guidance and peace. Give me wisdom as I speak and as we discuss it in class. In Jesus' name we pray, and all God's people said, amen. All right, I probably say this every time I do a video. I am not here to cover absolutely every dot of information in here. I'm here to touch on some highlights. I do cover quite a bit of information. Love me some Dickey's barbecue. Ooh. Um, yeah, just water. Um, I hope y'all have learned to laugh at and with me. All right, so what we're talking about is any kind of harm done to another human being, right? So anything. Generally speaking, these categories are you could put anything under these three categories. So it's physical, it's sexual, or it's emotional. Um, Intimate by definition, as we talk about it in this class and in this textbook and in the field, does not necessarily mean that they are sexually involved. In other words, it could be a couple who are a married couple, heterosexual married couple who are not having sex. It could be, and yes, that exists, and that is a sad, tragic thing and a problem, but it exists. It could be a dating couple that's not having sex, whether that be heterosexual or homosexual. Um, so that's just to put that out there. We're talking about a relationship. Generally speaking, I think we would say a romantic relationship, but it doesn't necessarily have to be sexually involved. Um, there is always in abuse, it is believed that there's an element of power and control. So abuse is about controlling someone, and it is about an exertion of power over someone. Many cases are never reported at all. Um, Some of that's maybe even appropriate, some of that's not appropriate. So let's go in our imagination down the road that would say, imagine yourself, whether you're married or not, that you and your spouse get in an argument and things get so radically crazy out of control and you get so upset that the wife comes after the husband swinging at him and he grabs her and moves her out of the way and runs out of the house. Okay, technically we have just experienced intimate partner violence. Let's say they both calm down, it's an isolated incident. It's very sobering to them. It catches their attention. They talk about it. They share. They go to counseling. They talk about it openly in counseling. It never happens again. We're good, right? So did we need to call the police in a situation like that? My opinion would be no, right? And it's a case by case, individualized situation, right? Nobody was hurt. There's no blood. There's no broken skin. There's no bruises. We're just, it's just we just got out of control and got a little physical. I'm not minimizing and I'm not excusing. I'm just telling you those are scenarios that are extremely common, and technically they go down in intimate partner violence. Very high percentage of those types of incidences are never reported. And again, whatever level of appropriateness you believe that fits is I'm okay with. We can agree to disagree or whatever, right? So if you have been abused and you heard that, you would be more likely to say, oh, yeah, no, that needs to be reported. If you've never been abused and you heard that, then you would say, yeah, probably that could go unreported and that'd be okay. Again, I'm at peace with whatever, right? So you could say, well, I was in that situation and I reported it. I'd say, okay, good, cool. You feel like you needed to report it, you reported it. You certainly have the right to do that. That's good. That's okay. Please hear that. Please understand that. Please be one of those kind of people that lets people have different opinions and different ideas. You have an idea, I have an idea, they're different. Let's be at peace with that, right? So, and I'm certainly willing to debate with you and talk with you. Although I won't fight. I wouldn't fight that. I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool, good call. Make a call. I'm done. I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't fight you at all. All right. Sometimes, talk about this non-report deal, there are many incidences that should be reported and that are not reported, right? So there's, man beats the crap out of wife gets mad at husband and comes in while he's taking a nap and hits him upside the head with a frying pan and leaves a big old gash. And I mean, dude, like, wow, what the heck, like either one of those is like, yeah, that should be reported, right? So there's obviously when you look at things on a continuum, right? So you have one end of the extreme and the other end of the extreme of just barely kind of something happened versus like beat the crap out of somebody. The extremes are easy calls, right? Well, of course, everybody agrees. Of course, my goodness, there's blood and broken arm, and yeah, we should call the police, right? So there's those situations that are easy, like that's cut and dried, like boom, yeah. As the challenge is for us as people who are intervening and ministering to people is what do you do with those situations that are in between? And actually, it's not up to us always as to whether the authorities get called or not. And that's a whole nother deal. We'll get to actually we do cover that later on down the road, so I won't do that now. We want to talk about this from a spiritual aspect as well. And certainly, I would agree that this is a spiritual problem. It's not only a spiritual problem, right? It's an emotional problem. It could be a chemical imbalance problem. It can be a drug problem, an alcohol problem, a mental illness problem. It can be multiple factors. But is it a spiritual problem? Yeah. Is there an element of this that's spiritual? Definitely. I really believe that abuse is very simple, very simple, in that we are fallen sin nature. And part of one of the common threads and a powerful thread in hang on, I'm just going to adjust a teeny bit. I really don't like my lighting, but I'm not sure what to do about it. All right, sorry. One of the common threads of our sin nature is our desire to control one another. Men are generally physically stronger than women, therefore men generally attempt to control women through physical means. Women may try to control men through emotional abuse means. I am not condoning that. I'm telling you, I think that's certainly not what God intended, right? So the man's physical strength being greater than the woman's physical strength is clearly not a matter of lording strength over. That's not God's heart. God's heart is that, if anything, that strength is used to protect her, and to protect his family, and to lead his family, and to guide his family, and to work in the fields. If you go back to Adam and Eve, not there for the use of control. And yet, when sin comes into the picture, selfishness and control take over oftentimes, and there you go. You could be saying, well, what about the other way around when women abuse men? Yeah, and we'll address that more. But the greater percentage of physical abuse, especially physical abuse, is men physically abusing women, and sexual abuse. Greater percentages there. The textbook has percentages. I put a few percentages in here, but not a ton. So 2 million injuries and 1,300 deaths annually to women alone. And healthcare and lost productivity costs. So y'all understand that when there's an injury or an illness, and the government calculates the cost. Not only is it what did it cost in terms of insurance and payment out of pocket and everything added together, and some of that is lost productivity. In other words, how many days was that person off of work? Was that woman off of work from being because of abuse? $8.3 billion annually. Whew, that's like, dude, that's over the top. That's crazy. That's just insane amount of money when you think about it. And very sad. All right, so there's different theoretical positions. Probably the oldest, or one of the oldest, certainly written out or in writing, is by Walker in 1979. And this is you may have heard of the abuse cycle. There's a little three-part little diagram, if you will, in the textbook. Tension begins to build. The victim tends to walk on eggshells, try to do everything to appease. It doesn't work. Eventually, there will be a blow up, and there's the battering incident, and then there is the honeymoon phase. And this is just a really twisted sick when you think about it, guys. It's really, really twisted and sick, because this honeymoon phase, he's bringing her flowers. I'm so sorry. Just in it. But you know what? How long is it going to be? A month, 3 months, 6 months before this happens again, right? So, it's just a cycle. It's just an ongoing cycle that goes through those very, very predictable phases. And let me say, when we talk about theory, I want to say that there's probably, I don't believe that there is one theory that would perfectly describe the whole thing, right? So, the theorists who espouse to a certain theory, oh, ours is the theory, ours is the leading theory, ours is the bestest and the greatest, and ours explains the most and takes it from the most angles, and bleh, and I look at all of them and go, yeah, there's some good stuff in all of these, right? So that's a very integrationist. I integrate theoretical perspective. Most counselors do. They may use the term eclectic. The field is liking the term integration more today. Okay, so the Duluth model is the power and control wheel. So it goes through this whole processes and looks at these different types of abuses. Economic abuse, right? So I'm going to do a lot of male female, right? So I'll talk as though, like, at times you're going to be like, wait a minute, but you just said that females abuse males. Yes, and it could be that the female is in charge of the finances and she abuses him economically. Usually it is the male abusing the female economically, not giving her money. I've had clients like, well, I have to practically beg my husband just to get money for groceries, much less anything else. I'm like, oof, right? So I'm like, so you don't have access to, like, you don't have a credit card that goes into or a debit card or anything? And oh no, my husband won't let me, hear the terminology, won't let me have a credit card or won't let me have a debit card. And I'm like, oh, abuse, 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 danger, Will Robertson, danger. Using male privilege, again, that's just a way to eat power, just throwing around power. Using the children, that usually sounds like, well, if you leave me, the children will never, they'll stay with me, and I'll tell them you're horrible and how horrible you are and in how many ways, and they'll believe me, and you'll lose the children. Minimizing, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. It just wasn't a big deal. That's minimization is a form of denial, denying and blaming. Blame, it's your fault. If you wouldn't have popped off at me and been so disrespectful, I wouldn't have hit you. Right? So it's your fault. That is really, really sick and twisted, but it's very common. Abusive men isolate their wives. They don't allow them. They don't let them have friends or be in contact with family members, and it's usually real. Sometimes it usually starts out just very almost whiny and, oh, but I want you to be with me. I don't want you to go out with your girlfriends. Um, what? It's not enough to be with me this weekend. You don't need to go see your parents. And blah blah blah. Whatever. We come with me then. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. It's like it's really and so and then it can become just no, you're not going. Right? Over time, once he gains that control, then it becomes very very aggressive. Um, Emotional abuse, just yelling and screaming and cussing and putting down, and um, it can be very, very, very painful as well. And I've heard people say, you know what, I'd rather you hit me than emotionally abuse me. Ignoring, that's a very abusive thing. Is just to ignore someone, just completely ignore them. Like, whew, that's really cruel in my opinion. I would rather you hit me or scream and yell and cuss me out than ignore me. That's just a personal thing of mine, but whatever. Intimidation, threats, um, coercion, physical and sexual violence. These are all the kinds of things that the Duluth model talks about in great detail. Learned helplessness is also an interesting theory. You can Google this, Seligman's uh, research project on dogs, where they took them and put them in cages. Then they would give them a mild electrical shock. And you would say, oh, some of you are like, I can just hear it right now. Oh, this is horrible. I can't believe you're even telling us about this. This is animal abuse. Yes, it is animal abuse. And today this would not be allowed. So I'm not condoning. I agree it is animal abuse. I'm just telling you, back then in 1975, they were allowed to do projects like this. No, you would not be able to do this project today. Um, but at the same time, it is very interesting. So here they put the dogs in the cages, they electrocute them, and then they open up the cage at random times, right? So the dog does whatever the dog does to try to get away, to try to escape, to try to keep from being electrocuted, right? I mean, dog is however smart the dog is, and whatever all he or she tries, and it doesn't matter. Whatever I do, I'm gonna get electrocuted at some point. So they will just lay down and give up, become very passive, and they'll just sit there. Open the cage wide open. I mean, big whole end of the cage opens up. Like, come on out, right? Dog won't leave the cage. Um, it's called learned helplessness because I'll get shocked out there too. It doesn't matter what I do, I'll be shocked. So that you can see how that translates over into the person who's abused. I've called the police. Only thing that happened is it got worse. Um, I've talked with friends and relatives, and all that happened was it got worse. So the message, the thing that the person learns is it doesn't matter what I do. It's not going to make any difference. I've tried walking on eggshells. I've tried being kind and nice and happy, and I've done it all. Bless me. I could have turned the video off for that. Sorry, but it was too late. It just came. Woo. Um, so that is one theory, and I think again, when you use the integration approach or eclectic approach, you can see how we could use bits and pieces of all these theories. I think there's another theory or two mentioned, but we're going to leave it at that. You can read the rest in the textbook. All right, so common issues that come up in the crisis situation. You have Intense physical and emotional stress, obviously, on the person that's being abused. And it may exceed the person's resources and coping mechanisms, coping skills. So the goal is to empower. You want to empower as much as possible the survivors, the victims of abuse, to solve problems effectively. Um, you want to triage. Triage is, I don't know if you're familiar with the term triage. Triage is used in a lot of settings. One of the most common examples of triage is the emergency room, right? So if you're sitting there and your stomach hurts and your head hurts and you're maybe even kind of like rocking and doubled over and moaning, right? All right, we're going to get to you very soon, sir, because this is not good, right? Um, Someone comes in with a bullet hole in their chest. Oh, shoot. I am going to sit here with my little stomach ache and my little headache for another little bit because they're going to take care of that person with the bullet hole in their chest and not me, which is appropriate, right? So now if my situation worsens and I begin to violently shake and fall on the floor and foam at the mouth, and this goes on for a while, now I'm going to get some attention also. So that's triage, right? So we want to look at obviously if there's remember could be a crisis situation. Counselors are called in. Someone's been abused. Many police precincts will use some of the community mental health centers. So you might be on a team and might be a licensed professional counselor or a social worker or maybe even a pastor. Sometimes pastors are utilized and you're going to show up. So, a person's sitting there bleeding half to death, or, half like stunned because they're so physically injured. Forget talking to them. Don't worry about it. If you're talking to them, it's we're getting you medical help. We're putting this white t-shirt on your wound and we're going to press and it's going to hurt, but we're going to slow the bleeding down a little bit, right? So you're just, it's like, let's just keep this person alive. You're saying things like, stay with me, look at me, stay alert, stay awake. What's your name? We're just trying to keep this person physically alive. Also, immediate safety is a concern, and let me say too, not just the safety of the abuser of the abused, but your safety, right? So you come into a situation and the abuser's still there, and the police aren't there, or even if the police are there, right? It's like, yeah, I'm like, I'll wait till the situation gets stabilized before I do too much because I don't want to get beat down or shot in this violent scenario. Um, if the children are involved, if children are even witness, then there's no choice. It's mandatory. You have to report it, right? Beyond that, it's the victim's choice um, as to whether they call the police or not. And guys, I am just here to tell you that can be one of the most painful and frustrating things because you're sitting there looking at this poor woman in the ER or on the curb, bleeding profusely, black and blue face, maybe even almost can't tell they're a human. And they're saying, no, I'm not going to report it. And you're just like, dude, you have got to be kidding me. Like, no. And I mean, it's not your choice. I know that's just one of those things. You just, I know. Um, you want to increase their options or their perceived options, right? So they may have options that they don't realize they have. So you're helping them to recognize options that they have. You're helping them mobilize and utilize their resources. You're helping them. Um, you want to begin to focus at some point on continued support, whether that be professional help or um, family and friends, and that's once the crisis is stabilized, obviously. So you're looking at physical injury, you're looking at immediate safety, you're looking at decisions as to report. That's just kind of in a nutshell. Those are the big biggies that kind of summarizes. And then there's a whole section in the book about cultural sensitivity. I don't mean to disrespect that and by not spending a lot of time on it, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. There are different views and different cultures. There are cultures that believe it's okay to beat your wife. Um, I'm sorry, but I have a huge problem with that, and I would say, well, that's not legally the way it is here. in America, but there are people that believe that. Uh, Certainly with children, there's different opinions on what is child abuse and what is not when it comes to spankings or physical punishment to a child. And I am glad I am not judge and police officer because I don't have to discern and decipher all of that. But I do want to understand when it comes to culture, their relationship with the police, their sensitivity to getting outside involvement. You have to be sensitive to these things. Um, Patriarchal family structures. Feminists would say that this is a big problem, that patriarchal family structure is a big part of the problem. I would say, um, I would agree with that, but I would also say there's an awful lot of room here for men hating kind of stuff. I've jokingly said if you look at a pure definition of a feminist as someone who does not want females to be abused and minimized and negated and ignored and um, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, any other adjective in there like that, if that's what a feminist is, then I'm a feminist. Many of the feminists are, the shake the fist. We don't need men. All we need is an occasional sperm donation. Oh wait, we really do need men, don't we? Yeah, it's a struggle. Um, Men are cruel and abusive and horrible beasts, and that's just all there is to it. Like if that's the mantra of a feminist, then I'm not a feminist. But I do not want to see women harmed and abused in any way. Socioeconomic status is also a factor that plays in to this, and really a lot of that just has to do with it's not necessarily to say just because you're poor you're more likely to be abused. Most of that has to do with resources, right? So the woman is, there's unemployment, there's poverty, there's lack of resources, there's lack of education, lack of knowing what your resources are. You may have the resources and you don't even know it. Immigration, immigrants and refugees are also, they oftentimes feel more isolated to their resources or are unaware of or uneducated about their resources and therefore oftentimes more susceptible to spouse abuse. Religiosity. I have heard of stories where pastors have sent women back to their abusive husbands to say you need to go submit to his authority and be in that home and be a good submissive little wife, and they have ended up being killed. And I would personally look that pastor in the face and say her blood is on your hands with confidence. So that's gee, Professor Fairchild, tell us how you really feel about it. Yeah, that just really gets me going. Men using the Bible, blankety blank, woman, you need to submit. That is not the heart of God. That is not at all what that means at all. Not even close. Um, Boy, I tell you what, I get emotional and riled up, and it's like, whew, yeah, sorry. Okay, female to male violence. It does happen. Um, Very minimal attention in the professional literature and is very underreported. And some of that has to do with just culture, like what guys like, yeah, my wife beat the crap out of me. Like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, no, sorry, culturally, that's a pretty strong stigma. Therefore, it goes unreported. Um, Methods: burning, uh, gunshot wound, hitting with objects, and withholding sex, and emotional abuse. 50 to 90% of males would admit to having been emotionally abused at some point in their life. And as a counselor and seeing what I've seen, I would agree with that. I would put it closer to 80 to 90% most of the time. The reason this is such a broad, you look at that and go, dude, 50 to 90%, seriously? Because you're talking about unreported. This is stuff that's not reported. Um, I thought it was interesting that withholding sex is, and I think the textbook even just says includes threatening to withhold sex is considered a form of abuse. I thought that was interesting. LGBT violence, it pains the world to say in any way, shape, form, or fashion ever that the violence in the LGBT community is greater than in the heterosexual community. There are many studies that suggest that it is greater in the LGBT community than it is in the heterosexual community. I've noticed trends, and I've been in the field for a long time now. Graduated with my master's in '92 and started counseling right away. And I have seen trends in the literature, and I'm convinced that it's researcher bias. Um, and I think this is one of them. 20 years ago, we would have said, "Oh yeah, definitely." There's much greater violence in the LGBT community than there is in the uh, uh, heterosexual community. And when you read this section in the textbook, you'll walk away going, "Well, you just said there's more violence in the LGBT community, but your opening statement was similar or maybe a little more than similar or greater in the heterosexual couples than in the LGBT community than there are in homosexual and heterosexual couples." Whew! Ah, wow, that was hard to get out. So again, no disrespect for the LGBT community, but I'm not going to spend much more on that than that. Um, dating violence. I get pretty riled up. I have 4 daughters, and I would not tolerate this. I would not tolerate this at all. I pretty sure I'd get 3 or 4 of my rough, tough, big old guy buddies, and we'd pay a visit to this young man, and I would set some real clear boundaries, real clear and huge. Like, you will never lay a hand on her again. In fact, I don't even want you ever to see her again. I would use police, whatever, that's fine. But we could get a restraining order. That's all good and fine. But restraining orders or not physical barriers. They're made to be broken. They've been broken many, many times. Many women have been killed in the midst of a restraining order being in place. But yeah, that's just. I say that in part not to try to sound like a tough guy and rah rah rah. But guys, listen to me. Think about this. What is the role of the family, right? An intact family protects their own, right? So when the family breaks down and the protection is not there, then people are abused, people are hurt. Whose number one responsibility is to protect my girls? Me, period. Um, Oh, don't get Mama started. I mean, Mama Bear will kick your butt. I mean, so you think I'm tough sounding? Woof! Don't mess with our babies, right? So that's just, I believe that is God's solution. I believe that's God's plan for the family, part of the plan for the family. All right, so dating violence. I when I'm teaching undergraduate students and I'm teaching younger students, I stop and talk about this quite a bit. I tell the guys to be protective of our ladies. I tell the ladies to not take it from and report it and set boundaries. I've told girls at school before when I was in a previous school that I taught at, come talk to us, come let us know. And myself and the couple other professors and the security department will intervene appropriately, and this guy will not bother you, or he'll come kill you. I won't say that to them, but this, yeah, we're just not gonna deal with this at all. So you see the stats here. It's pretty common, kind of scary, way too common for my comfort. Kids see it at home, violence. Um, they're treated this way. Well, I can't talk to mom and dad about it. Heck, dad beats up mom, so what the heck? So it's just a real pathetic cycle that goes on. Obviously, there's all kinds of emotional and problems and mental illness that come from date violence. There's date rape and there's date violence. I teach kids all the time, young ladies, if this guy seems to be at all, it always starts with control, being controlling. Well, I don't want you to wear that ever again. I don't like what you're wearing. You did not wear that. Excuse me, I wear whatever the heck I want to wear. I don't think so. I mean, that's a girl's response to that. And like, I'm, furthermore, I'm done with you. Like, how about just we're done. You don't tell me what to do. Period. We're dating. You're not my husband. And well, yeah, we could go on about that, but I don't even believe it's appropriate for you just don't treat people like that and tell people what to do. It's just not, no. Um, I've had clients where, yeah, my husband checks the mileage on my car. I remember the first time I was a very young counselor, I heard that and I was like, they do what? It was just absolutely like, oh, maybe I was in school and heard of that. That's something that people do. I don't know, but I was like, no, 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 no. That's sick. That's twisted. That is just money, mileage on the. I'm like, dude, whew, man. So if the guy's doing those kinds of things, if he's not yet physically abused that girl, he will. There's just no question about it. Let's see, just a few more slides. Y'all bear with me. Screening, obviously, the first thing you want to do is create a safe environment. That is goes back to counseling 101. Your attending skills, your listening skills, your support. Uh, you want to let them. You want to validate them. You don't want to question them. They may be not making sense and flip flopping and all over the place. And well, I don't believe you. You don't make sense. Like you just can't say that to people. That's not your place. So you validate them, you hear them, you listen to them, you hear their story. Then you begin to get into details you need to know, like what's going on if you're going to help them. And here's an inclusion of what you want to include in your questioning, right? So level of severity. I won't read. You can read, right? I'm going to read them to you. You don't want to come across as judgmental or blaming at all in any shape, way, shape, form, or fashion. It is not their fault. I don't care what they've done. Um, and response to that your response to their disclosing is that you validate and you reassure, you help them begin to gather resources. You are being very directive, but you don't want to just take over complete control. And here's a resource too. You want this hotline to be something that's very readily available to you and to give to them. Um, you want to create a plan. As time moves on, that resources and barriers, right? So when I say resources and barriers, I'm thinking about, well, a resource is dial 911. A barrier is he has a tendency to keep me from here. He rips the phone out of the wall. He takes my cell phone and smashes it with a hammer. Like, okay, that's not a resource because the barrier outweighs the resource, right? So you're keeping those kinds of things in mind. Um, this can be total separation. It can be they're still together, but you have a plan in place for if things escalate, and your only chance there is escalate is intervention early enough before it gets to the point where he's that violent. Again, it's their call, right? So you're like, dude, he's gonna kill you, girl, and I'll tell somebody that he's gonna kill you if this keeps up, he's gonna kill you. Like, oh, you don't need to say that to somebody. And you have to jar people into reality sometimes. And sometimes that can be helpful. And it might not work. It might just be offensive and hurtful and they leave and that's the end of that. But my heart is to try to get them to understand that they need a plan that includes them getting out of there. Your plan has got to be unique to each situation. I can't even hardly sit here and lay out a plan for you. I mean, there's things that need to be in place and safety being number one. Um, but do they have uh, information for a shelter? Do they know how to get there? Do they how to get there if they don't have their keys anymore because he's taking them away, right? I mean, there's all kind, getting the police involved. Um, um, you're walking them through this. They have to make the decision, but you're helping them and empowering them and giving them the resources that they need to have. Let's see. Also, you also want to be involved in thinking about the emotional impact, and that's going to be more long term. Obviously, right at the moment, you're just trying to keep them safe and alive, but these are some of the things that women deal with on the other side of abuse. Really, anybody, but again, primarily women. And then there's the intervention for the batterer themselves. Primary goal is safety. Secondary goal is cease all violence, any and all forms of violence. And then you want to get them into some accountability. This can be groups. There's programs and counselors who specialize in this. I am not one of them. This is one of those. One of my classes, I have a difficult clients that you would deem as difficult to deal with. This is my number one right here, the batterer. I don't, yeah, I don't, sorry, but I don't deal well with them. All right, last slide. That's it. Goodbye. God bless. Have a great evening, and I'll see y'all in class. Thanks for watching the video. Bye bye.